Welcome to the August tips. This month we're going to be looking at wasps. Know your enemy, or in fact, are they really an enemy? Also, we're going to be looking at highs and lows of the season and visiting some of my hives that we looked at earlier on and find out how they've got on. We're also looking at varroa treatments and honey harvesting. But before we look at some bees, I'd like to just mention this little piece of wasteland at the bottom of my garden. Really happy, I just sprinkled one box of cheap meadow wildflower seeds in April-May time, and look what's happened. The bees are absolutely loving it, and I'm hoping this will be the case until the frosts come. And the great news is that all these should self-seed, and so I'll get the same next year. Anyway, let's go and look at some bees. August is the traditional month where you would remove your supers and start your honey processing. So make sure you've got plenty of equipment, jars, strainers, your extractor, and all the paraphernalia that you need for that. And once you've done that, it's all about treatments. There's lots of treatments on the market. I use these two and I recommend them. They're both VMD approved and very efficacious. This first one is Apili Far, which is made from a thyme extract, so it's a naturally occurring chemical. You need 3 or 4 of these doses through August really. This one is Apivar, which is a parasitically manufactured chemical called amitraz. The advantage of this is it's not temperature reliant and you only need 1 treatment. Now, I'm not going to talk any more about this because I've got a couple of videos that I've done that you're welcome to have a look at, and I will talk you through step by step the virtues of it and also how to use it. There are over 7,000 species of wasp, and that's just in the UK. I found this small nest in the ground here. You're just as likely to find the nests in a compost heap or in the loft or in the shed. So what have all these species got in common? Well, unlike honeybees who just feed off flowers, the pollen and the nectar, wasps' diets also include aphids, caterpillars, black fly, white fly, all the things which are parasitical to flowers. That's why they're known as the gardener's friend. So if they're helping flowers, that helps bees. You have to think, well, why do so many beekeepers hate wasps with a vengeance? To answer that, we have to understand the life cycle of a wasp. So in springtime, the queen wasp will create a nest, and that will expand in size, very similar to a bee's nest, until midsummer, where they can be up to 10,000 strong. After then, the same as bees really, the queen wasp will lay eggs which will develop into new queens, and then when the weather starts getting colder, those queens will leave the nest, mate with drones, and then find somewhere to hibernate to start the whole cycle again. So that's great, but the problem we have is that there are lots of wasps getting older back in the nest. The old queen will have by that time died, and so it's complete anarchy in there. They are getting grumpy, they're looking for quick feeds, so that is when they start tasting your ice cream, going into your drinks, all that sort of thing. And of course, beehives have got everything they want. They've got the honey, they've got all the food there, so that's when they become a real nuisance. So if you're thinking, well, I don't really want to kill wasps unnecessarily, the fact is that if it's either the wasps or your bees, then you won't be damaging the life cycle of wasps that much, as these wasps will die out anyway and their work has already been done. During wasp season, your beehives can become fortresses, your bees against the wasps. So you need to give them the best advantage possible. So if you haven't already, now's the time, if you possibly can, to reintroduce an entrance block if your hives have these, and even more so, you can reduce the entrance I use one of these cheap pot scourers. Just snip a piece off the size that you want and reduce the entrance even more. Usually you're talking around about 25 mil. 2 bee widths may be enough for your bees to enter in and out, but also to protect them against the wasps. You will see, if you're unlucky, which is not unusual, you'll see wasps continuously trying to enter in here, and these little battles happening all around the entrance. So the smaller the entrance, the more opportunity they have of protecting their young and the goodies inside, which is the goal. If the bees continually get barded, and wasps will always go for the weakest of all your hives. I've opened it before now and it's resembled something like a pub brawl. There's lots of mini one-on-one attacks going on inside your hive. It's quite horrific, and if you get to that stage, quite often it's too late. They've already devoured the young, the honey, they've killed the queen, and at this time of the year, then it renders your colony fairly hopeless. So get it reduced down. Alternatively, if you have a different kind of hive, I do like these over here. These have just gone on the market quite recently, and the great thing about these is you can make them exactly however big you want by just sliding these gates either side, and you have a bee-shaped hole there, which is brilliant, not only against protection against wasps, but you can also use them as a mouse gate during the winter. So finally, if you're lucky enough to have one of these things, a WBC, they should come with one of these sliders each side, so you can literally either side just adjust the entrance to whatever size you feel appropriate. That's plan A. Plan B, belt and braces, is to use wasp traps. Get them dotted around, underneath, on top, around, anywhere you like. I personally use a nice, strong, sweet beer, a good brown ale or something like that, a good stout or something. When I used to have far more hives than I had now, when we're talking about like wholesale protection against wasps, I used to have an agreement with my local landlord, and he would give me all the slops free of charge, and that would be perfect. So that's another one. These will also protect against the hornets as well. I've seen these literally filled up like wasp jam, it looks like. Get them put down early, I would. And finally, if you do manage to identify where your wasp's nest is, or hornet's nest, which is causing the danger to your colonies, then how do you destroy them? Well, personally, I do this by getting myself well protected, be armed with a brush and a hive tool or a spade, whatever you need, and grab the nest in its entirety, throw it into a bin liner with an ample spraying of multi-purpose insect killer, tie the end, and then vacate the area, because there will be lots of very unhappy wasps with no homes to go to for at least 24 hours. Well, it's been a mixed season to say the least. We had that really long wet spell at the start of the year, which caused queen mating problems and swarming, and then we've got the limited honey flow for some beekeepers because that season is much shorter unless we get a really good Indian summer. So I thought I'd share with you a few of my successes and failures throughout this season so far. First of all, I'd like to show you my purple dragonfly hive. This is one that didn't go so well. Started off well. In June there was around about 40 pounds of honey there, but at the end of June they did what I assumed was re-queen themselves. They produced 3 queen cells. So if you get 3 queen cells or less, that's usually a good indicator that they're re-queening and not swarming. More than that, they're into swarming. So I left them alone, and it wasn't really until the start of July that I realized that they hadn't re-queened, there was no brood or eggs, so I was left with a group of old ladies just residing in the purple dragonfly. So what should I do about this? It's middle of July. I've got to make a decision. Do I try and revive this by adding a new queen? The problem with that is if you've got old bees, they are less receptive to new queens or any kind of change. A bit like older people, dare I say, sometimes. So I have decided, I've made the decision, I'm going to leave these ladies alone. They're going to live out their lives in here. I'm going to take the honey, what is left there, and later in the year I'm going to clean it out and get it ready for next season. If you saw my July tips, I'm a keen believer in making sure that you average out your bees so they're all in a strong enough state to stand a good chance to go through the winter. If you haven't seen that, I suggest, if you've got time, to have a look at my July tips on that. But this is a case in question. I don't know if I'd call this a success. It's too early to tell, really. It's a nuke box made from a small cast that I took in July. Now, I know the saying, a swarm in May is worth a bale of hay, a swarm in June is a silver spoon, and July isn't worth a fly. Well, this is my challenge. I found this little cast and I thought, well, it's got a good queen in there. I know I've got to wait for the queen to mate because it's a cast, so it's a virgin queen, but it started laying eggs and it was across 1.5 frames, that's all. So I've introduced another 2 frames from other hives to it, and I just thought I'd see if I can get them through the winter. So there we are. I put 2 patties on there. That's only about 3 or 4 days ago, so they are eating well. This is a fondant patty with pollen in. This is candy pollen actually, which I really do rate highly. So it's encouraging more activity, more laying and feeding them at the same time. And then I'll give you a little peek. Here is the hive. It's only across 3 frames now, but it's still, I'll say, we're not quite into August yet. So that's my little project. I thought we'd have a quick return peep at the WBC hive. If you remember, back in April, May time, I put this in my bottom apiary with no bees in, just some old comb to act as a bait hive, and this has been a big success. So I just thought we'd have a little peek. Now that it's getting towards August, let's just see what we got in here. I've been inspecting regularly and I've introduced some new comb where I could, and so let's have a peep inside. As you can see, these are called lifts. If you haven't used the WBC before, it's more time consuming, more expensive, but what you do have is a magnificent looking hive, and the insulation property is far better than national wooden hives. So that's what you get. And here we are, look at that beauty. As you can see, they are across 10 frames. I'm not going to even interrupt them. I'm not even going to scrape the grace comb off because I had a little look at them not so long ago, and there we are, very, very happy. That should be on song for next season. And this has got to be one of the highlights of 2021. It's the top bar hive. We just started top bar hive beekeeping last year, so this is the second summer for this particular hive. We've actually split it once and still managed to get some honey off. It's been across 16 frames at the back end of July, and how a top bar hive works is that the bees work out horizontally, and towards the end of the season, if you're lucky, they will deposit honeycombs at either end. So I've taken one top bar off each end, as you can see here, and cut it across. These are going to go actually straight back into the hive for them to draw out again. because there's no wax introduced at all into this hive. It's all naturally drawn out from local resources. And here is the result. We are one of these families who have had a wedding postponed about 5 times during the COVID lockdown. So the wedding finally goes ahead middle of August, and this is our little present to the happily married couple. It's our own little jar at each table setting with a little square of our top bar honeycomb, as you can see there. So you can't get any more local than that. Well, that was August. I must mention, if you are a new beekeeper, bear in mind that every season has its own challenges and is completely different. This season has been a bit of a one-off, so I really hope everything's going well for you and you've got some honey at least. And the important thing is your bees are in great shape, ready to start next season. See you in September.